Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whoever you are and wherever you are. Today is 9th of May 2026, Saturday. At the moment here is, today is quite rainy day, cloudy, dark. Um, a good Saturday night to have a good night's sleep, to be honest, here in KL. Oh, so most of you who doesn't know what KL stands for is Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Alright, today I just had some one of the items is a mail call and the other one is I actually forgotten that I've got it, and I probably didn't talk about this note in my last review of my other mail calls. So this is the quite old one that I missed out for mail call, and this one I just recently got it about a couple of days back, which is this week. So doing these two reviews of these two banknotes. Uh, Sidetrack of today's current event or this week's current event. It's quite horrible, I would say. Things gone down the road, not so great. So yeah, America has problem with the election. Like for example, Supreme Court in Virginia slams down the Democrats. Uh, Voted by the people for approval for, you know, so-called gerrymandering or whatever it is. So, and things gone very bad across the world. Great Britain had a local election. Reform Party wins the majority, which is a target opinion polls that probably the Reform Party will take over and become a government of United Kingdom, which is really bad for those who wish to go to UK to build a life there and so forth. It would be a bit questionable things. Australia, again, it will follow what UK has done. If the British people in the United Kingdom has voted a radical right wing tendency, Australia will also follow the same pattern. Majority of the people will vote for a radical right party. I would say this in the future, this country will be in a downturn, politically and economically. It is a self-destruction that they never see what happened in United States, and what's happening in United States should reflect what today is all about. Devastation, economic turmoil, own citizens being harassed, killed, murdered. Who knows what the government would do? And believe it or not, there are a lot of local authorities. They're human beings. They're voters too. Will embolden themselves that they have supported a very radical right-wing party, would abuse their power to commit crimes such as like ICE would. So yeah, the world will be in turmoil. China is bolstering up uh, its military, its profane uh, cult of personality of its uh, president of China. Japan is retrofitting itself to be more militaristic. To be honest, Japan should have the right to be rearmed because of the threat from China. Yeah, but the way I don't know, I displeased with how Japanese treat its foreign, or they'll call it alien citizens in Japan, quite bluntly, I would say, poor. So everywhere in the whole world is actually running in amok. Radical right wing parties are taking over because current mainstream political parties can't fix the country itself. Great example is Great Britain. The Conservative Party in the previous government failed miserably to build up the country, and then they voted for Labour. And now Labour is not able to even rectify the problems that the Conservative Party have done, the Tories has done, and eventually people lost hope between the two main parties. the Conservative and the Labour Party, a lot of it shifted to radical left or radical right parties as an alternative choice to give them the chance to run the government. Lib Dems also has failed in Great Britain. I don't know how much would that be. Scotland still have the Scottish National Party. Uh, Most of England is now probably portion of the vote of the Labour is moving towards reform, moving towards the Green Party, and a lot of the majority of the Conservative or the Tories are moving to the Reforms, a much more radical party in United Kingdom, and probably it might give back the rise of the British National Party, which is considered in the old days really uh, fascist party. But even in light to that, I think the Reform Party will be absorbing all these radical right wing, anti immigrant, anti Muslim sentiment voters and politicians going into the Reform Party. Will this spell disaster? Hopefully not. Not too big, I would say, but certainly there will be an impact, I would say, in that way. World is turning down towards hell. We are bracing a new world on the future. That's far I would say at this point of time. Okay. And then with the doom and gloom of the whole world, it's time we go back to something that we can enjoy. Banknotes. So again, I'm reviewing the two notes that I had, very old mail call that I forgot to review, and the latest one. So at the moment, I'll go through the older ones. Has been far delayed uh, to be presented. So this is a note is $1, uh, issued by the government, as you can see here, the government of the Straits settlement. Now, for those of you who don't know where is the Straits settlement is actually located in the Strait of Malacca, which is currently is wedged between Malaysia and Indonesia, which is where the location of the Strait of Malacca is. Now, along the Strait of Malacca, there is the part that we call right now we call it west part of Malaysia, or the Malay Peninsula in geographic terms. There are three major cities, which is Penang, Malacca, and Singapore. Three of these is considered a colony directly ruled and governed by London. Now, of course, there are still few stages. If you understand the British colonialism era during its imperialism, there are few categories that domain controls in colonies. There's protectorate colonies, there's dominions, there are a crown colony, as we call it. Now, the crown colony stage is the most prized possession of the Great Britain colony. They're very important ports, very important areas. So who are the crown colony are? Crown colony is like Hong Kong, Penang, Singapore, and Malacca are all in the status of the crown colony. Crown colonies, they are all governments are controlled directly by London. Okay, and they have their own issue of the banknote for that specific locations. Now, for the government of the Straits settlements, which they control three crown colonies, which is Singapore, Malacca, and Penang. Now, Hong Kong is a separate one entity, so they have a so-called a government of Hong Kong as also a status of crown colony. India is another one colonies. And Africa, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, certain areas, even Oman was considered, if I'm not mistaken, Oman or Yemen was considered as a protectorate under the British rule, under the British colonial status. So so many status, many different. Now I'm gonna talk specifically this banknote's existence. It was manufactured and issued out for the local currency use or for the value of $1. And it was issued on the 1st of January 1935. Now if you notice this banknote is quite poor condition, yes, because I was not capable enough or so-called interest to get a better condition, because the better the condition of this kind of notes, especially the straight settlements, they're quite expensive. So I actually snagged this in such a condition for a really reasonable price of, if I'm not mistaken, it was around 80 ringgit. It was really cheap, below 100 ringgit kind of margin price. So for that price and for its condition, I think is still really good. Okay, now what is the interesting of this note? If you notice, now Malaysia today they use Malay language or Bahasa Melayu. Now in the old days, sorry, let's just say today, most of the Malay language that we speak today they are written in the alphabets from A to Z. So it spells out accordingly to the language of the Malay tune. But in the old days, the Malay language was actually written in Jawi. Malays are predominantly Muslim majority, and they were influenced by the Arab traders. So they took up the language from where the Muslims derived from, so they used Jawi as a form of writing language. Until colonialism took over, the British took over, things changed, and a lot of the Malay language were used for Jawi has converted into using the alphabet that we use today, A to Z. So a lot of people are trying to revise the Malay language to use Jawi back, which is a really big change, which I hope it doesn't. But it is encouraging, I would say, that a national language to learn traditional Malay calligraphy writing in Jawi. Then that is something that I would model or encourage the education system to go through. But to change from alphabets A to Z to this written language at this moment of time is gonna be difficult, especially for those who grew up writing in A to Z. Okay, and then trying to understand this is going to be a headache. Okay, so that's the one thing. So this language here is written in Jawi, but it's actually, when you read it out, it's in Malay language. You have English, which is contains the major part of it. That's why it's written in English right here. The government of the Straits settlements promised to pay on the bearers of demand in at Singapore $1. Okay, the local currency's value received on the 1st of January 1935, and above is written in Mandarin. Now, most of the time when you see banknote like this, it has three languages in it, because during those days, even today, you see the demographic in Malaysia today, there is a mix of Chinese, Indian, and Malays, mixing together, being a multiracial nation. In the old days, because the British understand that they have major different cultural backgrounds and major different religious backgrounds from these specific groups of people, so they have to make their currency more readable and understand immediately for the purpose of commerce. That is why the banknote not only written in English, which is the British people who use the banknote, but also the Chinese people at that time who doesn't read English nor Malay language. So they read it in the Chinese. As you can see, it's written here in Chinese. So it's a straight settlement, and then above here, you write here $1 in Chinese, and also in Jawi is written here for the Malay language at that time. The portrait, of course, most of you know, during the time of the reign of King George, so that's the portrait it is. And the watermark is actually, I don't know where you can see because the paper is quite poor. You can see the shape is actually a tiger or Malayan tiger. So that's our and in the back they have the, the image of the tiger. If I'm not mistaken, this image, if I'm not mistaken, is Britannia, I believe. I'm not too sure whether this is Britannia, which is a portrait, and then the watermark is a head of a tiger, specifically Malayan tiger. Okay, written here $1 at four corners, and the bottom here boldly written. If you can see, Bradley Wilkerson and Company Limited, New Milden, England. This is the printer, the engravers of this banknote. Okay, it's one of those companies. I think it still exists today. I'm not too sure. Of course, the largest one is Thomas de la Rouge. So they are the major manufacturing and of currencies and banknotes across the world. They're contracted by many countries, especially Commonwealth countries, and specifically Malaysia. We contracted them to print our current banknotes to that we use today. So this is $1, 1935. Not much to say, but the banknote is quite poor quality, I would say. Uh, in respect, there's holes, pinholes, missing pieces, but at least the missing pieces is not so bad. It's not overlaid until the point of the integral print. So I accept that the wear and tear of it, this condition for my collection. Now of course you put it under light, there's a lot of fold, missing piece of the hole here, as you can see, hole on the head here. This is not, the hole is right here. So yeah, and especially in the center when the fold is so heavy, the fibers start to disintegrate and it creates a hole of it. So yeah, but all in all, this is just a personal collection rather than investment. Something to remind me that in the old days, my home country, my country, exists as a colonial British colony, and they have produced their own banknote, and this is how they were used at that time. Of course, the higher denominations like the $5, the $10, those becoming more ridiculous price. Actually, it costs more than thousands of ringgit, I would say, or thousands of dollars. So the most affordable one is actually the $1. A good condition one could fetch up to probably 1,005 to 2,000 ringgit. But I will settle with this one for myself as a personal collection, reminding me of the past. So banknotes do have some unique points, not just, and it's quite different from trading cards collection, where condition becomes the priority because of the resale value. Banknotes, on the other hand, tells stories, ages alongside. This is printed in 1935 or after 1935, and it's still being preserved and still exists right now to tell the tale what has gone. And probably imagine this note has been used, touched, and gone through surviving the Second World War, and then going through the independence, the communist resurgence, and people kept this note safe. Even until Malaysia achieved independence, this note actually became null and void, no longer used, because uh, the Crown Colony has become an independent state, forming its own country. Like Singapore will have Singapore dollars, Malaysia will have Malaysia ringgit, and this money will become the Straits settlement was currency no longer valid or should be used no longer. So yeah, this is a very prized. It has a lot of historical background. To me, is a lot of history gone through the banknote, and yeah, and it tells the country that I'm living in, where I was born, where I was raised, the past was something like this. The banknote tells me it's past. Even its condition is poor, it does tell me it's wear and tear, going through time, and hopefully, I will get its other denominations, the $5, the $10 in the future when I have the capital, and if the price is good. So that's one. The other one I want to talk about would be the one I just recently got it this week, which is the Central Bank of China during the Republic of China era. Uh, this is a 250 custom gold unit printed in Shanghai for the custom use. Again, from all my previous videos that I mentioned, these type of banknotes are difficult to find. Why? Because the problem is its awkward denomination. A 250 denomination is always anything that is something that is half like this or a quarter of it or really odd numbers, they don't really circulate and use very often. And when it comes to collection, yeah, in sort of collecting it by the collectors like myself, these type of denominations are very difficult. The 2250, the 2500, the 25,000. These kind of numbers are really really awkward numbers of denomination. They tend to be less practical to be used. Now the 500 one is much more common actually than the 250, and then the 100 custom gold unit is more common. So in between the 100 and the 500 banknote, they are very commonly found. They are much cheaper to be in price wise value. They are much cheaper compared to 250, which is more expensive because they are difficult to find. You got me? And why are they difficult to find? Because they are not in the circulation. Nobody kept it. A lot of it threw away this or returned to the banks, and the bank unable to reuse this banknote because nobody wants it. It's not practical to use such banknotes or such currency with a denomination 2.5. They don't exist really really well, and a lot of it they just take it back and then they return to the central bank, and the central bank will burn it. That's why the quantity is very small, resulting in the price very high. It's very difficult to get and very high. So I like to repeat again. Weird denominations are tendency. If you find anything weird denominations like £3 or £4, those are the denominations that are really hard to find in the market. Okay, the quantity would be definitely smaller due to the nature of trading. If you transaction, when you do a transaction, I would say it's really difficult to get back the change. Okay, unless you specifically you got some products that is exactly 250 CGUs. So if not, people are not going to use this money and pay. Okay, it's impractical. Okay, and through that notion, this type of banknote is really difficult to get. Even you go to eBay, I got this actually from eBay, and among all the sellers out there, this one pops up only one or two times. At first, I was trying to get the one with the uncirculated condition, which is vastly expensive, but I noticed though this type of note is impossible to get anyway. I was trying to deal it, and then suddenly it get cancelled because they can't deliver to my country. So I got my refund, and then finally I found another seller. This is from Australia, and the condition, well, there's a lot of missing piece here, and then there's a tear through here. But knowing the condition is quite bad actually, but the price I pay is about 40 ringgit. 40 Aussie dollars, Australian dollars, which is relatively cheap uh, for its condition. but also expensive because among expensive than the 100 CGU and the 500 CGUs is still more expensive because it is really difficult to find. In any condition, this note is really difficult to be found. Okay, not many collectors would have 250 custom go unit. They will have the 100, they will have the 500, but they will never have the 250. It's one of those blank spots that is missing. And to me, I have been missing the 250 for a very, very long time, and finally I got it in just a couple of days back. Okay, details wise, everything is in brown. So it's crested, so the concept of it is still remain the same for custom go unit. You have the written denomination in Chinese in four corners, and then mainly in the center of the crest, serial number at the top and the bottom, the seal of the general manager and the assistant general manager, the year of the Republic of China. Now this one is printed in Shanghai, so it's written there, and the bank sent the name Central Bank of China, with a portrait of Sun Yat-sen right in the middle top. So all the concept of the custom gold unit banknote is there. Now this one is printed the early days one, the first type, which is printed in 1930s. So 1930s, all the CGUs are actually printed by American Banknote Company. So everything is controlled by one company. It was controlled much more stable until the national government decided to use this currency as for commercial use rather than specifically for custom office to be used for paying the custom duties. So they started to circulate this type of banknote into the public for regular usage of a banknote. That's when you see a higher denomination, but they're also vastly cheaper because of inflation. They keep printing it more. But the 1930 ones, they were much more limited, but they didn't print. But the problem is they print a lot of it is in the 10, the 20s, the 50, and the 100 denomination. They printed a lot of it. The 250 they didn't print a lot, but it was still printing it. But as you know, as I said earlier, I just don't know sound broken record. Due to its impractical denomination for the usage by the masses, the quantity is still very small in general circulation. Most of it returns back to the bank, especially to the central bank, to be destroyed. So the quantity wise, today existence of this type of banknotes is pretty much small quantity, small number. But the 100, the 50, the 10, they were much more used by the public. It was conveniently used, and the central bank printed more of those notes. That is why you can buy those type of denomination in 1930s series for very cheap, like 20 ringgit, 30 ringgit, or in US dollar it could be about $5, $10. In a really pristine condition, uncirculated condition, you can get it for $10. That's the most expensive price range for those type of notes because they are widely available, and there are way too many in general circulation, and some even not even being used, and still in a great bundle of stacks, as some would call it. So yeah, those are very common. But the 250 is the same series. This is pretty rare. Other denomination that is very rare are the small denominations, like one custom gold unit, 20 cent, 10 cent, 5 cent. Those denominations, the small one, don't survive quite well, and they don't print so too many of those small denominations because of the hyperinflation. Those denomination becomes pointless to be print and issue. As time progresses, things gets more expensive because of hyperinflation. So they actually moving towards printing more of a banknotes with a higher denomination, like that's where you see 10,000, 20,000, 25,000, all the way up to 250,000. Even the 250,000 odd number is another note that is really difficult to find. Not only is it the biggest denomination of the custom gold unit, but it's odd number. It is impractical to be used unless you're paying a lump sum of 250,000 CGU, or if you're paying 500,000 CGUs, 750,000 CGU, or 1 million CGUs, then that note will be practical. But if you're going beyond those kind of numbers, that note becomes a really headache to be doing transaction, especially giving back change. It's impractical. So everything here in the note is quite the same. The only major color difference is the brown color they use, and the crest will be very uniquely of 250. Can't miss that. So the back is pretty obvious. Everything remains the same. It's in English, signed Western by the General Bank and also Assistant General Manager, showing 250 250 CGU, and it says written here is promised to pay. In 1930s, all this will be written in, but those that are printed after 1930s, tendency you see some would have this words, some don't have this words, but the principle of the banknote design is similar, intact. This way, you have English at the top, you have the building in the middle here, you have the denomination here with a English written here in alphabet and also in numerical. You have the bank sign by the general manager and also assistant general manager written down here, printing year. Okay, pretty much all the same, and the printing who are the printers of the company, which is this one. As you can see, is called America Banknote Company. Okay, so this is one of the very lucky one that I am able to find in the eBay. 1 in a million, I would say, or 2 in a million. One has rejected it, and this is one's very successful, and they are able to deliver to Malaysia. So I'm very happy to get it. But although the conditions wise is not so desirable for investment, but for collecting wise, yeah, it's worth it. For its price I pay, it's worth it. And knowing it, it is really difficult to find another 250 custom gold unit. It is a keeper for me. One of those sets that are difficult to achieve in collection, that I've been looking for. This note, I've been looking for this note for many years. From dealers to dealers, every shop I went, I was trying to look for this note for 250 without avail. None of them has it. Okay, coincidentally found it in eBay. I gotta have it, and it's one of those things that in my collection wise, in my bag, is really missing in my album. And today, this weekend, I would say I'm really proud, really happy that finally I got this note in my collection. One more step closer in completing my collection. That's what my joy of it is. So that is all I have for today. These two wonderful notes that would be in my collection. So if you guys like this video, do just give me a like. If you want further future notification of my videos or my short video clips, which I tend to do more on that one to show details of the banknotes in 1 minute script kind of thing. Do subscribe. If you have any comments or anything you want to ask about, or correct my mistake of what I have, my statement may be wrong, do write it down in the comments. I will read them if I could, and I will appreciate if you correct my mistakes, because I don't have all the information, or sometimes the information maybe I got wrong. So people have different opinions, people have different knowledge. Sharing them will actually integrate it more better understanding on any perspective ways. So I hope that you will give me a, a criticism or more so what, you know, or correct my mistake of my statements, you know, go ahead. I have no problem, and I will actually try to read it and understand it. So that is all for today. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you real soon, probably next week or so, for my other mail until I have another mail in call from Europe. Until then, that is all. Goodbye.